The long peace Earth had avoided war for centuries after the last world conflict on their own soil. Humanity made a promise they said never again. The skies of Earth had once burned with fire, oceans turned red with blood, and cities crumbled. Under machines of war from that darkness rose a new oath, that humanity would never fight unless it had no choice. As years passed, that promise shaped their future. Humanity spread among the stars not as conquerors but as builders. They turned barren planets into green homes. They created farms where deserts once stood, on worlds light years away. Children grew under human-made skies, laughing without knowing the taste of war. Alien races watched with curiosity, some with jealousy and others with confusion. To many, humans were strange, a species with the strength to fight but choosing silence. While galactic empires clashed for territory, Earth stayed silent. While species raised mighty fleets to show their power, Earth kept its ships docked. Whispers spread in council chambers across the galaxy. Were humans cowards, or were they hiding something? Their silence made enemies mock them, but also made allies wonder, because silence can be louder than war. In the great city of New Geneva, a place known as the heart of human diplomacy, a young student once asked her teacher, "Why do humans not fight like the others?" The teacher looked out the window, at a statue of an old soldier, he said, "Because we remember what war costs." His words were simple, but they carried a weight. They spoke of billions lost, worlds scarred, and dreams destroyed. And though the child did not fully understand, the warning lived in her heart. 3 centuries passed in this peace. In that time, humanity healed wounds that once divided them. They cured diseases that had haunted their ancestors. They ended hunger that once broke nations. Their ships flew across stars not to conquer, but to connect. Their traders brought food, medicine, and learning to those in need. Their engineers built stations that became safe havens, and their scientists discovered wonders no empire had dreamed of. But peace in the galaxy is a fragile thing. Many alien powers saw humanity as weak. They whispered that Earth had lost its courage, they said. Humans would never raise weapons again. In their arrogance, they forgot that patience is not weakness. It is a sleeping storm, waiting for the wrong hand to strike. The first shadow appeared at the edge of Terran space. A small colony known as Dawnspire stopped sending messages. At first, it was dismissed as a relay error, but when rescue ships arrived, they found only ruins. Cities turned to ash, rivers poisoned, and no voices left alive. On a mountain wall, burned deep into the stone, was a message in alien script: "The weak have no place among stars." The galaxy had seen colonies destroyed before, but for humanity, Dawnspire was different. It was not just a mining world. It was home to families, children, dreamers who believed in the promise of peace. Their loss sent a shock through every human world. Markets fell silent. Prayers filled temples, and in the houses of leadership, screens replayed the ruins again and again. In the central council of Earth, leaders gathered in secret, their faces pale. As they watched the destruction, some spoke of restraint, some of caution. Some still clung to peace, but an old admiral rose from his chair. His voice was steady, though his body weak. He said, "We have been patient for centuries. We chose silence. But if they force us, then we will show them what Earth remembers." His words echoed in the chamber, heavy as stone. While leaders argued, the news spread wider. On another colony, a survivor was found. A boy no older than 15, trembling, covered in ash and blood. He told them how the enemy burned homes while laughing, how they shouted that humans were cowards, how they promised to march on Earth itself. His voice broke as he spoke, but his words struck harder than any weapon. Streets filled with anger. People who had never lifted a weapon demanded justice. Soldiers who had never seen battle sharpened their blades. And in the mountains of Earth, deep beneath, ancient doors sealed for centuries, echoes stirred. Behind those doors lay ships hidden from the galaxy. Weapons older than the colonies, machines built not for conquest but for survival. Humanity had locked them away long ago, but now the locks began to tremble. The enemy thought they had found an easy prey, but what they truly found was the silence. Before the storm, and in that silence, humanity's patience ended. For the first time in 300 years, Earth prepared for war. The enemy's first strike, the enemy did not stop after Dawnspire. Their ships moved deeper into Terran space, swift and merciless. Small colonies that once lived in peace suddenly became battlegrounds. Burning skies lit up over farming worlds. Trade stations and even medical outposts, the Drax, as they called themselves, believed they were teaching humanity a lesson. To them, war was survival, and survival meant crushing all who stood in their path. The human fleets, built for defense, but rarely used, scrambled to respond. At first, the admirals hesitated. For generations they had been told peace was their shield. Their soldiers trained but never tested in real combat. Yet the Drax gave no time for hesitation. On the colony of Red Harbor, the first true battle began. Red Harbor was a shining jewel of trade. Ships from dozens of species docked there, its markets full of life, its skies filled with commerce. But one morning the stars above turned black. Drax warships descended, their cannons burning through the orbiting stations. Civilians screamed as fire tore through the skies. Defense towers tried to resist, but they were outnumbered. The message was clear. Earth's colonies were to be erased. Captain Aaron Vey of the Terran Defense Fleet was stationed nearby. His ship, the Valiant, was not built for war but for patrol. Yet when the call came, he did not hesitate. His crew looked to him with fear in their eyes. "What can we do against so many?" they whispered. But the captain only said, "We hold the line until help comes." Those words became the first spark of resistance. The Valiant and 4 smaller frigates engaged the Drax fleet, their weapons outdated, their armor thin, but they fought with a desperation the enemy did not expect. Lasers tore through the void. Explosions rocked the silence of space. The humans fought ship by ship, refusing to surrender. Every blast they fired carried the weight of a people who had kept their fury buried for centuries. On the ground, civilians rushed to shelters, but many refused to hide. Miners turned their drills into weapons. Farmers grabbed tools. Ordinary people defended their homes with whatever they had. When the Drax soldiers landed, they expected easy prey. Instead, they met mothers, fathers, and children who fought like warriors. For the first time, the invaders tasted fear. Hours passed. The battle raged. The Valiant was torn apart, fire spilling into the void. Captain Vey gave his last command: ram them. His ship crashed into the largest Drax vessel, the explosion lighting up the black sky like a second sun. The sacrifice gave Red Harbor enough time. Reinforcements finally arrived. The Drax, shocked by the resistance, retreated into the dark across human space. The story spread like wildfire. A small fleet and a handful of colonists had held back an empire's strike. But the cost was heavy. Red Harbor burned, thousands dead, cities turned to ash. Yet the spirit of resistance was born. In New Geneva, the leaders could no longer deny the truth. The Drax were not testing humanity, they were declaring extermination. If Earth remained silent, there would be nothing left to defend, and so the order was given. The fleets hidden in mountains and oceans were to be awakened, old weapons cleaned, new ones built. For the first time in centuries, Earth began to march toward war. The galaxy watched with unease. Many still believed humanity was weak. Others whispered that the storm long feared was finally coming, and in the dark halls of the Drax command, their warlords laughed. They thought humanity's first strike was nothing more than desperation. They did not yet understand. They had awakened a power far greater than they imagined. The Council of Humanity, the smoke of Red Harbor, had not yet cleared when the call went out. Leaders from every colony, every station, and Earth itself gathered in one place. New Geneva, the shining capital of human unity, became the center of fear and fury. For centuries, the Great Council Hall had been used for peace. Its walls echoed with trade treaties and promises of friendship. But now the hall was filled with shadows of war. Delegates argued as screens showed images of destroyed cities. Some shouted that humanity must strike back at once. Others begged for restraint, afraid of losing everything. A few still clung to the dream of peace, whispering that maybe the Drax could be reasoned with, but the sound of their voices grew weaker with every report of burning colonies. In the middle of the chamber stood the President of Earth. His hands shook as he held the survivors' report from Red Harbor. A boy's voice recorded through static. Trembling, he told how the Drax laughed while setting homes on fire, how they carved messages into walls calling humans cowards. The recording ended with silence, the silence of a child who never finished his story. The council fell quiet, and in that silence, Admiral Elara Juno rose from her seat. She was the oldest living commander, her hair white, her face lined by time, yet her eyes burned brighter than any flame. She said, "I was young when Earth swore never again. I believed in that promise, but promises mean nothing if we let our children burn. If the Dracs want war, then we must give them a war they will never forget." Her words struck like thunder. Delegates who once argued fell silent, for in her voice was not only anger but memory, the memory of humanity's last war, the one that had nearly destroyed their world, and the strength it took to rise from the ashes. Scientists stepped forward, carrying data. They revealed that, hidden across Earth and its colonies, were weapons locked away for centuries. Old warships stored in mountains, orbital cannons buried beneath oceans, technologies built long ago when humanity feared extinction. They had slept in silence, waiting for a day of need. Now, the scientists said, that day had come, but others warned of the cost. A governor from a farming world stood and cried, "War will take our sons and daughters. War will turn our homes into graves. Are we ready to pay that price?" The council fell into silence again because all of them knew the truth. The price of war would be blood, and much of it. Then a message arrived. Another colony attacked. This time the Dracs had left no survivors. Their fleet destroyed even the orbiting satellites, and their final transmission echoed across human space. Earth is next. The council could not deny it any longer. Debate turned to decision. The vote was taken. For the first time in 3 centuries, humanity declared war. News spread like fire across every colony. Some wept in fear. Others cheered in rage, but all understood one truth. The long peace was over, and the storm had begun deep in the mountains. Massive doors opened for the first time in generations. Ancient warships slowly rose from their tombs of stone, their hulls marked by dust and silence, their engines roaring awake, shaking the earth itself. Workers and soldiers watched in awe, for they had heard legends of these ships but never seen them. To them it was as if giants had awakened. The Dracs believed they had broken humanity's spirit, but what they had truly done was forge it into steel, and in the shadows of Earth's awakening fleets a whisper spread among the people. Humanity had been patient, humanity had been silent, but now humanity would answer. The awakening, a fury when the council declared war, the galaxy trembled. For centuries humanity had been a quiet voice among the stars. Now that silence had ended, and in its place rose a storm. In the deep mountains of Earth, doors of iron older than nations groaned open. Dust fell like rain as hidden caverns revealed their secrets. Within them lay ships the galaxy had forgotten. Massive dreadnoughts built in an age when humanity feared its own destruction. Engines that had not burned for 300 years roared. Back to life, their thunder shook the valleys, and their light turned night into day. Workers and soldiers stood in awe. Some wept, others saluted. These were not just machines, they were the guardians of humanity's memory. For generations they had slept, waiting for a moment like this. And now, that moment had come. Across the colonies, training camps filled overnight. Young men and women, farmers, miners, students all rushed to join. They carried anger in their hearts, but also something deeper. A unity no enemy could break. Songs of old battles returned. Prayers were whispered in temples. Oaths were spoken in every language of humanity. Together they said, "We will not fall." Scientists who once built medicine now turned their minds to weapons. Engineers who designed bridges now shaped warships, and factories that once produced harvesters now forged cannons. Every corner of human space became a forge of resistance, not of conquest, but of survival. The Dracs mocked humanity in their broadcasts. They called humans soft, fragile, unfit for war. But their spies saw the awakening, and even they began to whisper in fear, because what they saw was not a weak people rising. It was an old predator returning to the hunt, in orbit above Earth. The first fleets gathered, hundreds of ships forming lines across the stars, old and new vessels alike shining with fire. Crews stood at their stations, hands trembling but hearts steady. They knew the enemy was stronger in numbers, but they also knew something the Dracs did not. Humans fought not for glory, not for conquest, but for survival, and that made them dangerous beyond measure. In the council chamber, Admiral Ilara Juno gave her final words before the fleets departed. She said, "The Dracs believe we are weak. They believe patience is fear, but they will learn. Patience is not fear. Patience is the blade held behind the shield. And today, that blade is drawn." Her words echoed across every screen, from the lowest colony to the highest orbiting station. Children watched with wide eyes. Parents held their hands. Soldiers repeated the words as if they were a prayer. And in that moment, humanity stood as one. The first mission was set. Not an invasion, but a defense. The enemy was coming again, their fleets already moving toward the inner colonies. Humanity would meet them there and show them that the long peace had ended and the awakening of fury had begun. The first battle of blood, the Drax fleets came like a storm. Dozens of warships darkened the stars above the colony of Arden Prime. The colony was young, filled with farmlands and open skies. It was meant to be a symbol of peace, but now it would become the stage for fire and blood. The Terran defense fleet gathered to meet them. Lines of human ships stretched across the void, from old frigates to newly awakened dreadnoughts, their hulls scarred by age but burning with new life. Every pilot, every captain, every soldier knew the truth. This was the battle that would decide if humanity lived or was erased. Admiral Ilara Juno stood on the command deck of the flagship Resolute, her eyes sharp, her voice steady. She said, "Remember Dawnspire? Remember Red Harbor. Today we show the galaxy what Earth remembers." Her words carried across every channel, and the fleets answered with one voice. For Earth, for humanity. The Dracs charged first. Their ships moved like predators, claws of fire ripping into space. Their cannons struck the first human line, tearing apart smaller vessels. But the humans did not break. They tightened their formation, shields overlapping, weapons burning bright. The clash shook the stars. Explosions lit the darkness. Fire danced across the void, ships shattered, crews cried out. Yet humanity held on. Every loss fueled their rage. Every fallen ship became a reason to fight harder. On the surface of Arden Prime, civilians had not escaped in time when Drax dropships landed. Farmers and miners armed themselves. They fought in the fields, turning harvest machines into weapons. Children hid in bunkers as their parents stood against soldiers bred for war. And to the shock of the invaders, the humans did not run. They fought with the fury of those who had nothing left to lose. In orbit, the Resolute's cannons roared. Admiral Juno gave the order, "Focus fire on their command ship." The human fleet turned all weapons on the massive Drax flagship. Beams of energy and missiles cut through the void. The Drax ship answered with thunder, tearing holes in human lines. But the humans pressed on. Captain Darius Hale of the cruiser Tempest saw his chance. His ship was burning, half the crew gone, yet his voice was calm. He said, "We end this." The Tempest charged forward, ramming the enemy flagship head-on. The explosion lit the sky like a dying star. Both ships vanished in fire, but the Drax formation broke. Silence fell across the battlefield. Then, slowly, human voices rose. The Drax were retreating. For the first time in living memory, an enemy of humanity had been driven back. Cheers erupted across the fleets, but the victory was not without pain. Dozens of ships lost, thousands dead, cities on Arden Prime burning, and yet, in that sacrifice, a message had been carved into the stars. Humanity would not fall. Not quietly, not easily, not ever. Across the galaxy, empires watched in shock. They had thought humans were weak, but now they saw a truth that could not be hidden. The long peace had forged not softness but steel, and the Drax had spilled the first blood. But humanity would spill far more before the end. The first battle of blood was over, but the war had only just begun. The price of war, the first victory at Arden Prime, spread across human space like wildfire. Colonists lit candles in memory of the fallen. Children painted stars on walls, whispering the names of lost captains. Soldiers returned home draped in silence, carrying the weight of brothers and sisters who would never come back. The price of war was written in blood, cities in ruins, families broken, fleets shattered. And yet, from that pain, rose a fire brighter. than before because grief can break the weak. But for humanity, grief became steel. In the halls of mourning on Earth, thousands gathered. Screens showed faces of the dead, some young, some old, all gone too soon. Admiral Alara Juno stood before the crowd, her voice heavy, her heart torn. She said, "We are no longer the people of silence. We are the people of sacrifice, and sacrifice is the root of strength." Across colonies, people repeated her words like a prayer. Miners carved them into stone walls. Farmers etched them into their tools. Children whispered them before sleep. And in every heart, a promise grew. The Dracs would pay, but payment came with cost. The Dracs struck back again and again, each time faster, each time crueler. They burned supply routes, ambushed small fleets. They left messages carved in fire across the skies. Humans are weak, surrender. But each attack only sharpened human resolve. On the colony of Valor, an entire city fell in one night. Millions gone, survivors dragged in chains. When the news reached Earth, grief turned to rage. Factories that once ran in shifts began working. Without rest, ships rolled out of docks day and night, and every worker whispered the same words: for Valor, for humanity. Still, the pain grew. Mothers buried sons, fathers buried daughters, and sometimes the funerals outnumbered the weddings. Yet in that darkness, humanity found a new unity. Old rivalries between colonies faded. Borders lost meaning. For now they were not many peoples, they were one, and they marched together under one banner. In the council chamber, leaders debated. Some argued to fortify, to defend only. Others demanded vengeance, a strike into the heart of Drac space. But all knew the truth. The longer they waited, the higher the cost. The Dracs would not stop until Earth itself burned. One night in a small colony near the edge of Terran space, a group of survivors who had lost everything raised a flag. It was torn, stained with blood, but they lifted it high. They broadcast their message to all of humanity: we are broken, but we are not defeated, and as long as one human stands, humanity will never fall. The message spread faster than any fleet, and in it, the galaxy saw something terrifying. They saw a people who embraced pain not as defeat, but as fuel, and the whisper began again in the dark halls of alien powers. If the Dracs had truly awakened humanity, then perhaps no one could put them back to sleep. The price of war was heavy, but the Dracs would soon learn humanity was willing to pay it all. Humanity's answer. The galaxy held its breath. For months the Dracs had struck and humanity had bled. Worlds burned, families broken, fleets shattered. But each loss became iron in human veins. Each scar became a weapon. And now the time had come to answer. In the skies above Earth, the largest fleet humanity had ever built gathered. Dreadnoughts old and new, carriers heavy with fighters, frigates sleek and fast. Their hulls gleamed with the light of 1,000 stars. From orbit they looked like a storm made of steel. Every ship bore the names of the fallen: Red Harbor, Dawnspire, Valor, Arden Prime. The dead marched with them in silence. Admiral Alara Juno stood at the heart of it all. Her voice carried across every channel, to every soldier, every civilian, every child listening in hidden shelters. She said, "The Dracs thought patience was weakness. They thought silence was fear, but patience is strength, and silence is the breath before the roar. Today we roar. Today humanity answers." Cheers rose across the fleets. Pilots slammed their fists against their chests. Workers in factories stopped to watch. Children repeated her words like a song. And in that moment, the human spirit burned brighter than any star. The fleets moved. They did not wait for the Dracs to strike again. This time humanity carried the fire into enemy space. When the Dracs saw the human armada, their warlords laughed at first, but laughter turned to silence when the battle began. Human ships fought with a fury unseen in centuries. Formations held tight, weapons fired in perfect rhythm. Fighters weaved through enemy lines like storms of light. Dracs warships crumbled under the relentless assault. Their commanders shouted orders, but fear had already taken hold. On the ground of a captured Drac stronghold, human marines landed. They moved with precision, their eyes hard. They freed prisoners. They raised human flags over alien fortresses. For the first time in living memory, the Dracs themselves felt defeat on their soil. The galaxy trembled. Empires that once mocked humanity now whispered in fear. Because they saw the truth written in blood and fire. Humans did not seek war, but when forced, they became a storm no power could withstand. Admiral Juno stood on her command deck, her fleet victorious, her people united, she whispered. This is not conquest. This is survival. And survival is what humanity does best. Messages poured across the stars. Humans were no longer silent. Their answer had been given, not in words, but in fire, and the galaxy would never forget it.